Hello! Today we'll be doing a theatrical reading of Where Life Takes Us. Available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, paperback and ebook. It's also available at Kindle Unlimited. Chapter 2. This is where Ava and Gavin meet for the first time, or when they meet, where they meet, at a cafe. I'll be starting in the middle of Chapter 2. Gavin's British. I am not. I can pretend to do boy accents or boy voices. My English accent is actually not terrible, but I give you guys enough fodder to make fun of me, so let's not go there. With every tap of his screen, his scowl deepened. He put the phone down and closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. I could only stare at him, but quickly averted my eyes when he opened his and caught me. He flipped open his laptop on the table, powered it on, and waited for it to load. The cheerful man who sat down was now scowling and looked pissed. I glanced at the back of his laptop, spotted a logo, and realized we were both using a Silverbook Starburst edition. I smiled, then resumed looking at my own screen. "What?" he asked me. His tone was tense and rather angry. His lips set in a grim straight line. "Excuse me?" I asked, my eyes drifting to meet his. "You looked at my computer. Why?" he asked. His tone was clipped. Wow. Was he offended? Had I broken some sort of laptop-looking brand etiquette? "I just noticed it's the same brand and model as mine. Excuse me for having eyes," I said, lifting both hands in surrender, then rolling my eyes. Asshole, I thought to myself. Who gets all bent out of shape just because someone looks at the back of their computer? "Okay," he says, rolling his eyes. Then he returned his attention back to his computer, where he again scowled at the screen. I was so glad I let this guy sit at my table. After several minutes of silence, he muttered, "Bleep," as he tapped a few keys on his keyboard, restarting his computer, then leaned his elbows on the table and rested his face in his hands. I said nothing, not daring to lift my gaze in his direction for fear he might think I was spying on him or something else that was utterly ridiculous. "Pardon me," he said. I ignored him. Not sure if he was speaking to me because also not wanting to help him because, well, he was an asshat. I didn't need to anger him by looking up and being mistaken about who he was talking to. God forbid I look in his direction. "Ma'am," he said again. The words sounded oddly like mum. He waved his hand over the top of my laptop. "Hello," he said, dragging out the word. "Yes," I said, raising my brows and mocking him by dragging out yes, as he had with hello. "Are you having issues with the Wi-Fi?" he asked, his dark brows drawn together. "I'm not using public Wi-Fi," I said, looking back at my screen before we made eye contact. "Don't anger it." He scoffed at me. "You can't access the interwebs without Wi-Fi," he said, leaning back in the chair as he closed his laptop in frustration. He crossed his arms and quirked a brow at me. Did he think he was schooling me? Was he serious? "I use Wi-Fi, just not public," I said, then raised my secure hotspot. "Be polite," I chided myself. "What is that?" he asked, with a furrowed brow. "A secure hotspot," I explained curtly. "Really?" he asked, with brows raised. "May I have the passcode?" He flashed me what I figured was his most dazzling, "You can't say no to me" smile, as though he hadn't been a complete dick not 5 seconds ago. I looked up at him and raised a single brow. Cool trick, right? I did have a good "are you kidding me" face. "If I gave you the password, the device would no longer be secure," I explained, not buying his attempt at being friendly. Of course, now that he wanted something from me, he was being polite. The bleeper. "You can't share it just this once?" he asked. "Do you have a cell phone?" I asked. His brow furrowed, but he nodded and raised it. I turned my hand up and waved my fingers at him, silently telling him to give it to me, but he frowned. "I'm not giving you access to my cell phone," he said, placing his hand over his device. I rolled my eyes again, sat back in my seat, and crossed my arms. "You can turn your cell phone into a hotspot," I suggested, then stared as he raised a single brow at me. Apparently, he shared my talent. "Tell me, sir, why won't you give me access to your phone when you have no qualms asking for access to my device?" I asked, crossing my legs under the table. He was lucky I was short. His freaking legs were so long they were taking up my side of the table. Mine didn't actually touch the floor, but still, Personal space, right? He looked down at my legs when I crossed them and sneered. He actually curled his upper lip and laughed at me. Sir, he responded with irritation. You're kidding. You just called me ma'am. Besides, I don't know you. I always call older men sir. Older men? How old do you think I am? He asked, matching my seated position of arms crossed, legs crossed, and frosty tone. Older than me, I said, lifting my chin and shrugging a single shoulder. How old are you? How old are you? I responded. He smiled, a true smile that crinkled his eyes. I'm 38. And you think I'm older than you? I asked, my mouth agape with exasperation. His audacity! I don't look 38. How old are you? He asked again. 24, I answered, meeting his dark blue gaze with my piercing green ones. Match point to you, he answered. You're quite short, aren't you? He asked, pointing his long finger at my legs that were crossed but not touching the floor. Is that supposed to be insulting? I asked. Yep, I was pissed now. Who pointed out someone's size? I was so annoyed. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear my blood pumping in my ears. Do you typically comment on people's physical appearance completely outside their control? I fisted my hands that were crossed across my chest and felt my heat rise inside my head at his rudeness. Just an observation, he quipped in his haughty English accent. Bleep you, I thought to myself. I reached for my water glass, only to bring it to my lips and have barely a drop of water. Crap, now I had to stand. Fine, I was short. I told people I was 5 feet, but I was really 4'11 3/4. But who was counting? My height wasn't a problem for me at all. I could climb a shelf with the best of them. If this jackass wanted to be childish and mock my size, that was his problem. I grabbed my cup and stood, walking over to the water dispenser and poured myself another glass of water. Ignoring his smirk, I set the water back down and returned to my laptop. But bleep it all if he didn't sit there and just continue to stare at me unabashedly. Why did this have to be so contentious? I wondered, meeting his eyes, his brows drawn. I sighed, closed my laptop, and leaned back in my chair again, crossing my legs. Thinking to diffuse whatever caused his anger, I asked, Do you live in Boston, or are you visiting? He quirked a brow at me and said, Neither. I was bound for New York, and was redirected here because of the weather. I should be on my way to London today, but that will not happen for a few days, apparently. Do you live in London? I asked. Jesus, it was like pulling teeth. Tell me again why I let him sit at my table. Right, he was hot, and I was being nice. Plus, did I invite him to sit at my table, or did I just say he could take the chair? I knew the truth. No, he answered, not offering any more information. Bleepin' Oscar, I muttered under my breath and reopened my laptop, giving up on him. I didn't need to put up with it if he wanted to be rude. I grabbed my sandwich and took another bite. How did you know my name? He asked, deadpan. He had seen me take a bite of my food, right? I chewed and just stared at him. Then I swallowed and said, You're kidding. Obviously, he answered without expression, his tone flat. Asshole, I muttered under my breath. Why was he still staring at me? Did he want an argument? I was so annoyed I needed to talk to someone and get the anxiety out. I picked up my cell phone. Yep, he was still staring at me, and texted my girlfriends, Madison and Tracy. Okay, guys, so what happens between Gavin and Ava? Find out Where Life Takes Us. Available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, paperback, Kindle Unlimited, all the fun stuff. Thanks for listening. I know this was a long one, so talk to you soon. Bye. Happy Friday.